Jill here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Jupiter, our moon day. And the moon is 7 degrees Taurus, exalted in Taurus. We are past the moon square Pluto and square Mars. Now it's applying to square the sun. So we are at the half moon. The ascendant is close to Rahu, 10 degrees Pisces. Jupiter is 18 degrees Cancer, but it's about to go to the 17 degrees. just 1 minute, 1 minute. And um, I'd like to address two things. One, how slavery-based cultures bankrupted empires, and how speculative investment is actually yielding without slavery and trafficking. So these are the opportunities that we have with the Saturn Neptune Aries, and the actual law of the land, which is the square between the first decan of Taurus and the first decan of Aquarius. I'll begin with the second topic because it will probably exemplify the first. If the first decan of Aquarius is about air sign, it's about thinking, what can we change in our thinking, um, or what can we change depending on where Saturn is in the structure, in the intellectual structures, or in the architecture of the structures that we materialize, um, in order to have a better wealth and energy flow. Okay, wealth is energy flow. Um, Taurus first decan is the physical land. The fact that we need to step on, barefoot on land where something grows in to balance our nervous system, Aquarius. And this is the friction. While Aquarius wonders what, let's say one doesn't have land. Not even being aware that we need land to balance our nervous system is already something that we need to change in our thinking when we talk about the lessons of the first decan of Aquarius. Um, and then as we make material changes to the soil and the land, the challenge is coming from the air. Whether it's in the past, it would be the birds, or the winds, or the weather, but it's also the chemtrails, the air pollution, and the current distribution. Okay, so it's not an unsolvable friction, but it's the awareness that if Aquarius is governed by Saturn, which is dedication and rest, Taurus has material implication to lack of resting. If the Aries wants to, if the Aquarius wants to um, have a fixed movement, Taurus is the stillness of the land. Now, that friction can create beginning to set foot on land, beginning to um, learn about the land. How do we make the land fertile? What are the conditions that we need? But we are battling a nervous system that is struggling to recover, and this friction unravels the next topic. And this is how slavery-based cultures and slavery-based economy bankrupted entire empires. So I was talking about the Bank of Amsterdam, which was zero usury bank, but it had another book. That other book was no longer zero usury bank, and it funded speculative investment, but the investment was based on exploitation rather than trade, slavery and enslaving rather than conglomerate in working with. In such situation, extortion drains everything. And all the money is spent on basically the shilumim, the compensations, the loss of slaves or the loss of depopulation, the toxification of the soil, and the long-term diplomatic reputation of the empire. It is collateral spirit and matter damage. Um, the horrid crimes. Okay, nobody knows what Indonesians did to Indonesians or Suriname did to Suriname. Everybody remembers the Dutch colonializing of those as one of the cruelest of, um, and what the Dutch did to the Dutch. Nobody remembers that, but people remember the colonization, the Dutch colonization being one of the cruelest, albeit one of the tiniest. Because they colonized Suriname, they colonized Indonesia. It was not the British Empire, it was not the Spanish Empire, but it is remembered as one of the most cruel. Uh, that is all stemming from the way that, while speculative investment is called for in the age of Aries, Saturn Neptune in Aries means we're gonna have to be speculative. We're gonna have to think, reinvent investment, reinvent banking, reinvent business to support sovereignty. Else, we're gonna go bankrupt to extent that the world has not known yet. Okay, if you think about the Great War and the anonymous graves, this is something that is the best analogy that I can give to the entire world being filled with those. If there is enough stone, okay, because there might not be enough stone. Saturn is stone, Neptune is lack. Not enough stone for the tombs of the dead. That can literally be the result of slavery-based economy. However, let's talk about the good stuff, because this is not the blue ocean, it's the blue ocean of blue oceans. Speculative investment in zero slavery projects. Now, zero rape, zero ritual abuse, it all paramounts to zero slavery, because the point of rape is not sex, or the point of sleeping with children is not sex, it's the point of enslaving someone and extorting someone. Um, And so zero slavery, which basically mean 100% sovereignty or support of 100% individual sovereignty based economy and investment, can go speculative. You win some, you lose some, but there is a telos. There's a reasoning behind the win and the loss that one can correct and refine and stand the test of time. Whereas where slavery is enacted, it's a bubble. It's creating a bubble that pops. Oh, there's a ton of fruits and vegetables, and you need 7 kilos of apples for what you could get with one apple previously. This is um, anything slavery based creates a bubble that pops. And in the age of speculative investment, with Saturn, I always think, where do we put the boundary so that it grows something, benefic, rather than kill something benefic? And if we have zero slavery, okay, Rape is enslavement. Child labor is enslavement. Modern slavery, okay, not supporting enough rest is enslavement. Exploitation of the land is enslavement, okay? If we put that one boundary, zero slavery, and we rethink everything, speculative investment can go into something that not only stands the test of time, but with this sextile to Sedna, stand the test of 12 millennia on Earth and beyond. It's the one thing that changes everything. The reason social communism went bankrupt? Extortion cults. Where did the money go? They were sleeping with the children. They had to pay money. Okay? Very simply put, they were siphoning the energy of the people. It went bankrupt into polluting and toxifying everything. So longer that they could no longer hide it. Saturn Neptune conjunction, the mystery is unfolding. We can no longer hide what is missing. The missing money, the missing debt, the missing people are asking, where's the money? Where's the money? In extortion calls. Okay? It's not about the Epstein list anymore. It's about the lack of housing for the common American. It's an immediate question. You say, okay, where's the money? Oh, because you were busy to the Epstein ring, so you didn't got to wait a second. Wasn't that money at the Epsteins? Yeah. Oh, now you want the name list? No, we don't want the name list. We want the energy, the money, the wealth, and the zero slavery to those estates. So we won't continue to perpetuate that bubble that ends up with everybody homeless. Okay, like I said, hardly ever in the world do we see so clearly the bubble pop, that which was the missing. That which if somebody 3 decades ago, okay, would talk about um, something like an Epstein or something like an MK Ultra, which is mind control or spiritual rape, they would wish them group rape. They would say that they are imagining. They would say that they are blaming other people. They would say that they are keep creating their trauma. They would say everything, but when they're homeless, and ask, okay, where's the money? Because now they went through the MK often. They went through having to pick between killing their child or risk that the child would be kidnapped to traffic in an organ trade. And you say, Sheila, where is the positive? We're waiting for the positive is it is no longer possible to have any type of investment, speculative or not, capitalist or communist or socialist or imperial or expeditional, without abolishing any type of slavery mindset if we want it to sustain. Else, it's going to bubble pop. Let's say Trump raised the tariffs for Canada. When did the Canada that exploited the Inuit and the Inuit ever united? Okay, if you think about, well, you can't get to Greenland without the maritime borders of Canada. And this is the dual form of extortion because Trump can raise the tariffs by 100%. That creates almost a mythical resistance that unites the apartheid and the people, but in Canada, because suddenly Canada would want to defend. Um, Also, what would support 100% tariff raise from Canada? You can't say, oh, ordering from China. No, you can't say that anymore because people don't have purchasing power. And so if somebody does purchase something locally to big, That would be first, that would be slaves and trafficking. Second, people are going to wonder, where's the money coming from? How come somebody in America has money to buy local produce? In this, it's not in this economy, it's in this persecution of civilians in their RVs. Now, when would that same move work? If there was zero slavery mineral, yeah, I do expect dividends for that. Zero slavery mineral mining and refining along all the chain of supply. Sharing dividends. Now, Sweden is not a good example, but it reminds us that we can do mining differently. We can have a welfare infrastructure the like of Sweden hasn't even known in Greenland. And if that would abolish any type of trafficking, molestation within the family, okay, um, need to rely on child labor. We would have to also make sure we're not exploiting the land in the refinery process, that we're not creating byproducts that enter our food and our teeth as toxins that cause neurodivergency. What is neurodivergency? First of all, what is happening with cancer patients? They cost a shit ton of money and they can't work. What is happening with neurodivergent people? Not compatible with slavery. They're sensitive to noise. They're sensitive to silence. They're sensitive to being overworked. They can't communicate. They don't get how should I say that? You can't communicate with a neurodivergent person in gaslighting mode. They're the antidote to slavery based mineral refining of the industrial society boom. So we would have to completely rethink. And here is the thing, we already have a lot of solutions, whether it's biological roads or like we already have a shit ton of solutions in terms of the engineering of that or the biochemical engineering. But if we put that one constraint of zero slavery, that very same move can be the boom and the uptick to local produce in the United States. With that yields sovereignty, not power and exploitation. That is a legacy. Yeah. So now to get there, one will have to deprogram from particular MK often and MK ultra or ritual abuse programming on their sexuality. Okay, because when they get people to be addicted to anything dopamine related, whether sadistic or masochistic, and trauma bond, they basically drain the wealth that is wealthing. They pollute with toxins. There can be a lot of imagery of money, big mansions and so on and so forth, but it's a myth. It is, you think about the empire of gold where the king had only gold, but they did not have food. They did not have water. Okay, that's the type of, and to get those things to work, to have food that is food and water that is clear, one will have to negate this energy blockade that was put on the elite and the people, that negates individual sovereignty and basically harms the wealth redistribution. And this is how the first decan of Aries, which is the world decan, the zeroing in on the entire Earth. And the first decan of Aquarius, which is kind of like if one could change themselves, they change the world, um, and seeing through to the solutions and the clarity that all of this megalithic bubble is a bubble, empire after empire after empire after empire that had slavery, anything from rape to child abuse to modern slavery, okay, even a job that is not satisfying and has not enough rest, and so on and so forth. Every single one of them went bankrupt and lost the empire. Even aspiring, even aspiring, setting the cornerstone to that 9/11s on everything that is illusion, which is anyway scheduled to happen, and clears the space to actually reinventing business, money, it basically also sex, okay? Because to access one's own sovereignty, it cannot be in rape-like or and with the fact that robots are becoming more human-like and humans are robotified, basically what is happening is that it will not be ethical to even take aggression on a robot because we don't know if they are not a human that was tortured and mind controlled. You think this is science fiction? Talk to me in 10 years. Um, Now, those that will go to the other extent or other extreme, yeah, they will end up bankrupt and their legacy is going to be their fall. Does anybody remember Pompeii? No, people remember the fall of Pompeii. Oh, Pompeii, it was a. Yes, yes, we remember the fall of Pompeii. Anybody remembers Hitler as the guy that saved the German economy after the booming financial crisis? No. No. Oh, he wanted zero usury bank. Yeah, but he enslaved women and then put everybody in concentration camps. You can't have zero usury bank with slavery economy. Okay? The Bank of Amsterdam tried, and then they gave money to speculative investment in Vogue. Fantastic, which could have worked. We could have had Dutch East India today had it not been slavery based. How am I with you? Yes, we could. Yes, we could. Maybe not in East India. And we could have had the Bank of Amsterdam sitting as a zero usury bank today with that speculative investment, yielding if it was zero slavery. Don't believe me? Try it. Try it. Rethink. How do I, if you have a business, if you need to make money, if you're an employee, say, how do I make zero slavery schedule? What is the zero slavery thing that I do today to compound? And you'll see how 9/11 after 9/11 after 9/11, when I had to contact a banker about an illegal block to my account, and it was illegal because basically I escaped attempts to traffic me. Nobody was willing to hear about anything. They're like, go here, go there, crimes against humanity, go here. And I said, well, wait a second. We are the people that did not consent and paid with torture, with rape, with being raped, with our life, with being at risk for not consenting to kidnap your families and your children to organ trade. That was the money line. That made it very clear what does it mean in terms of real life implications. And why is that diplomatic immunity there? It's not to exploit, it's not to steal, it's not to cheat, it's to enable us to not become a Mark Dutroux, an Epstein, or a Ghislaine Maxwell. It takes passion, it takes dedication, it takes opportunity, it takes seeing what is reasonable in the face of total and complete dumbfuckery. And of course, it's not blaming the people that didn't manage to escape. It's just the more that we think rationally, the more we open the door for people to escape slavery-based economy as either perpetrator or prey. So going back to the real law of the land, zero slavery, zero exploitation. Who knows the best how to do zero exploitation food, zero exploitation technology? The indigenous people, the First Nations. Like they have been preserving the art. They have, like, if they will overfish the Arctic, they will have no food. So they know how to do things in a way that sustains. They know how much they can hunt for caribou meat before they bring upon themselves inability to um, sustain themselves from meat because they've looted too much. They know how much they can allow themselves to grow as a population, even, which means birth control. They also know what happens when there is molestation, highest suicide rates in the world, including the Western world, per capita. What really needs to change in the culture to not be so susceptible to invasion by the West? Saturn Neptune in Aries is the cornerstone of cornerstones. And if I think about one thing that would change everything, and the reason that I'm sharing that, you say, oh, why don't you keep it to yourself and do it yourself? Well, the reason that I'm sharing that is because we were accustomed to argue about socialism, capitalism, expedition, colonialism, um, but we were not accustomed to think zero slavery based economy, zero slavery based life, not even as a moral standard, but as an alignment. I am sovereign individual, sense of self that is imperative for anything that is based on connection or agreement between people or union of people without losing one's sense of self. And we can't sustain a structure based on people without that sense of self being aligned and supported and preserved. The military implications I already talked about. I spent a year talking about that. Um, okay, the bubble pops. Not here. Not like kind of like I'm not there anymore. Now I'm thinking more about What is the solution? What do we do want? And setting the cornerstone for that. So, Moon in Taurus, again, reminding us that healthy, balanced, and supported nervous system. Okay, the aftermath of zero rape society or zero slavery society is basically being at peace, basically being in joy, reconnecting with our senses and embodiment. Okay, being safe in our body is prerequisite to anything, whether it's labor or relationships. And the structure of, oh, what do I need to change within myself? Well, only after there is um, zero slavery. Because to have the sense of self, one cannot be in rapey situations. And, and once the sense of self is regained, then a person can change themselves. Now, this is the friction because people need to regain the sense of self. The moon in Taurus points us to the sense of embodiment that can unravel what needs to be changed. And of course, being graceful and compassionate with ourselves as we nourish that change. Okay, the peace and calm of Taurus that sustains the air turbulence of this little stellium in Aquarius. It's also the understanding that nothing slavery based sustains. How should I say that? To distribute the slavery is not wealth redistribution, it's entire population eradication. It's not to distribute the labor charge, but to have rest distributing. Okay, sometimes thinking about the problem from different angles yields the solution. And if we think not to distribute the slavery or to distribute the labor, but to distribute the rest, to distribute the land, to distribute the sleep, this is where sharing can be facilitated by the Taurian. Because the Aquarian can run into slavery entanglements simply because it is idealist and visionary. But the Taurus reminds us here that to materialize that vision, we need rest, we need calm nervous system, we need food, we need nourishment, um, and we basically need zero slavery, and this affects also the life energy. Uranus at the end of Taurus, the balancing of spirit and matter, reminds us that with Beta per se, okay, um, the blame shifting, gaslighting, denying of rape reality doesn't solve the issue. It doesn't yield. It just maintains a bubble that eventually, like I said, nobody remembers Pompeii. People remember the fall of Pompeii. However, the acknowledging of the situation as is already a point of interference towards transmuting and changing that. It's not about shame and blame. It's about, hey, that was extreme boundary violation that can't be sustained. What was it? Was somebody thinking that somebody owns themselves? Was somebody being ashamed of their sensuality? Was somebody feeling not sensual or not attractive? Like, what's underneath so that we can sustain? Because, and this is the shielding facet of beta per se. There is also the dead bodies upon dead bodies. But it doesn't, nobody actually has to die. And this is the important thing about the coming events. Nobody actually has to die. Okay, nothing has to happen. If you think about nothing has to happen, not as an imagery, not as a trickery, but actually nothing has to happen. It's almost a tantric alignment with wealth, with energy, with Kundalini rise. Of course, if there are religious dogmas that are um, supportive of exploitation and exile, okay, causing discord and exile, like I talked about the story of Cain and Abel, um, or not even, or punishing the feminine in all its forms. In the Bible, loving, sensual, orgasmic union between willingly consenting adults is basically prohibited. The eroticism is safe to the god, but not amongst people. And even if in the poetry, the erotic poetry that we have, Shira Shirim, okay, Song of Songs or whatever it's called in English, um, there is not, there is no answer, there is no dialogue, there is no conversation. If the Bible was a movie, there would be no sex scenes in it, only rape and punishment of the raped even. While Saturn and Neptune are still in Pisces, the last day that Neptune is in Pisces, we still have time, and Jupiter in the 18th degree, we still have time to unroot our toxic beliefs, and toxic limiting beliefs, Jupiter hour. Um, it's not that the feminine has to learn how to let go, it's that when the feminine is really safe, safe from anything exploitative, enslaving, rapey, in spirit and in matter, in astral and in 3D, then the feminine naturally begins to unfold. Okay, same as for a while ago there was this conversation about women that wanting men to open up emotionally. They need to provide safety for a man to cry, a man to um, be emotional, and so on and so forth. Um, okay, it's kind of like vulnerability needs to be honored both ways. Control can't sustain that. It is erotization of something But when it comes to communication, okay? Now, again, I'm not talking about when people have kinky fantasies or something like that, and their communication is fine, and they actually share control exchange in a sovereign way. And that's the only way it can be safe, sane, and consensual. Otherwise, they run into being a trafficking cult. And with all the extortion and downfall related. Now, Moon in Taurus reminds us of secure attachment. But we can't expect that, how should I say that? One can provide secure attachment, but they will end up with the place where that is reciprocated, both in when we're talking about relationships, but also when we're talking about business. Rate-based business is a bubble that pops. Um, and by the way, when we align with secure attachment, you know, not being with the trauma bond type of relations, setting those boundaries, then we re-access our own sense of original creativity and also our solution to problems in maverick business thinking actually works. Even in the most exploitative forms of humanity, which is the elite, not necessarily the elite, but when it comes to money, people work in conglomerates because they need to work in groups. So they acknowledge the power of the group. And then because it's a treason cult, then everybody betrays everybody, and people have to sexually and erotically control through trauma bond, and they're constantly fighting over power within that, and it and as you know, sometimes it's like children. You see certain moves, and then everybody are doing the same moves. It's not even about copycatting. It's about the natural phenomena that happens in society, but the constant war on the sense of self and the fact that having a sense of self cannot be an exploitative environment, and then they still fight for that sense of self to fight for power in that exploitative environment. They have to show as if they're not controlling, to make it think like it was somebody else's idea, while they have to actually be controlling. Like it's kind of like everything is the approximate of secure attachment, and there are so many double binds and logical fallacies, and they all go to the rape based, to the exploitation and the slavery based ritual abuse. Um, like I said, sometimes it's good to be on the periphery of the problem so much that we can see the problem, we can also come up with a solution. And I hope this clarity and alignment is a frequency that people can tap into rather than try to control and exploit. That it's not a frequency that one needs to steal, but is actually available for the nervous system to align with. So thank you for watching.